Hey guys, thanks for stopping out at Pete's Garage. Well, I'm at the point of building this 351 Windsor where I'm going to put the oil pan on. And what I would like to share with you are some tips and some information about oil pans that you may not have realized, such as how the oil pan you choose can add maybe 1 to 2% horsepower or reclaim 1 to 2% horsepower for your engine. And I know you're thinking, well, how can an oil pan do that? Well, there's several things. First of all, let's think about this for a moment. The oil has several functions in your engine besides lubrication and carrying away debris from the engine. The oil also has to cool the engine. And back in '69, when this 427 was built, it was just a pan, just a simple pan where the oil would drip to. And it's been like that ever since engines were made, and now up to the late, maybe the mid to late 90s. It was just a pan, and it wasn't considered a functional part of the engine. Well, technology, like developed through this Canton oil pan, this is a Canton oil pan that I painted blue, and this has features in it to help control the oil, where it sits and how it gets to the pickup tube. So you're thinking, what could possibly be in an oil pan, or what characteristics can an oil pan have that add or reclaim horsepower? First of all, let's think about it for a moment. This is a 7-quart oil pan. Usually your standard oil pans are 5 quarts, and you think about the additional 2 quarts. Now I chose that because of the volume, and I wanted to have an additional area. The way this pan is designed has a lot of area, so that when the engine is sitting in the vehicle, the air that blows across the oil pan has more surface area to cool the oil, to keep the engine oil cool. As the oil stays cool and is distributed throughout the engine, it helps the engine maintain an more even temperature across the entire engine. That's pretty important. The coolant does part of that, but the oil also does that. If you overheat your oil, you get thermal viscosity breakdown, which can be detrimental to your engine. Also, a pan can have a scraper in it. Now, if you think about the rotating assembly in your engine, the crankshaft whipping around, and as it goes and dips in the oil drips on the crankshaft, on the counterweights, you have that oil on the outside of the crankshaft. That adds weight to the rotating, not the reciprocating, the rotating part of your engine. That extra weight causes vibration. And you can have a scraper on the inside of your oil pan that will scrape that oil off, so you don't have that extra weight added to the counterweights. The other thing is oil. Now you can imagine your crankshaft whipping at high RPM through the oil, and it creates bubbles. Those bubbles can get infused into the oil, and as that goes through the engines, you can have fluctuations in your oil pressure, and fluctuations in oil pressure can lead to improper lubrication, which will also steal horsepower from your engine. So in order to combat that, you can put a windage tray in your oil pan, and the windage tray does exactly what the word is. It's wind. It takes the wind and the air and the whipping of the crankshaft as it goes around. It takes the wind away and the oil and the bubbles in the oil, and eliminates that problem. Now, when you're choosing your oil pan, the choice of your oil pan can also help. For example, a circle track oil pan is different than a drag racing oil pan, and it seems logical when you think about it. A circle track, the car is going around a turn, and as it goes around the turn, the oil is going to slosh to one side of the pan, and if it stays over there long enough, the oil pickup tube can be starved for oil, and the engine can get starved, ruining the engine. Just like drag racing. Drag racing, the car takes off really quick. First law of physics: an object at rest wants to stay at rest. You start accelerating really fast, the oil sloshes all the way to the back of the oil pan, and if you don't have the pickup tube or the ability to hold the oil near the oil tube, you could starve the oil within seconds, and in a 10-second pass down the track, you can ruin your engine. So there are several features and factors of why I chose this particular oil pan. So what I want to do is I want to show you the inside of the pan, what those features are, what they do, and how it could benefit you on your engine. And then we'll install it. I'll install an oil pan. I'll show you how I install oil pans. And I'm not saying it's the only way, the best way. I'm just saying it's the way that I do it. I've been doing it for a long time, and I've never had any leaks from the oil pan leaking where the seals to the block, or the timing chain cover, the rear seal. And I've never had a problem. So I'm going to share that with you. So let's take a look inside this pan. We'll look at the features, and then we'll install it. All right, so let's take a look inside this oil pan. First of all, I painted it. I painted it blue, and I painted it to match the engine, and that blue is gorgeous, in case you're wondering. I used the Eastwood engine paint. the high temp ceramic engine paint. It's a 2K paint mixed 4-to-1 with a hardener. And this number happens to be the, what is it, 51623ZP. That's the number. So it's 4 dark blue. That's the engine the paint I used to paint this oil pan. Now, as we look inside this oil pan, you can see a couple things. First of all, there's a rear sump and a front kind of pan sump here, and this is where we go over the front cross member. And there are 2 oil plugs. There's an oil plug in the front, and there's an oil plug in the back corner, so you can completely drain this oil pan when you're changing the oil. And each of the oil plugs has, pull one of these out, has built in it a magnet, and that magnet is there to pick up any small pieces of metal that will collect at the bottom of the oil pan, so that it doesn't get picked up and recirculated through the engine. You can see it's a magnet, okay? So the drain plugs have magnets built in to grab any ferrous material that may collect at the bottom of the oil pan, okay? Just get that started there. Okay. So they both have that. Now, if this oil pan had a scraper in it to scrape the oil off the counterweights, the scraper would sort of sit in here like this, and as the crank sits in the middle, the crank would come and it would come really close, and the scraper would wipe the oil off of the counterweights to eliminate the out of balance condition. This does not have that in it. It also does not have a windage tray. If there was a windage tray, the windage tray would sit in here and it would look very much like the windage tray inside your lifter valley in between your cylinder heads. That would sit in there. However, it does have this section here, and I'm going to move over a little bit here and we'll zoom in on this section. And this section here, this cover in the rear part of the sump, does act as kind of a windage tray. There's some holes in the back here that let me take this cover off for you, and I'll show you what this is here for. What this does to help the performance of the engine. This cover, as you can see, has some holes in the back, and as the oil drains through there and goes through this plate, this kind of acts as a windage tray a little bit. As the oil cascades down into the bottom of the sump, it breaks up the air bubbles and helps with the foaming and what a windage tray would really do for the engine, okay? Now, if you look at the bottom there, you see that square box, and that square box holds roughly about 1 quart of oil. So about 1 quart of oil will fit right in here, and I'll zoom in on that so you can see what that really is there for. Now, the pickup tube from the oil pump comes in here and it sits inside this box. And I'm going to try and show you what happens here. So imagine this is all filled with oil and you're accelerating or you're turning, and you want to have this constantly filled with oil. So in order to do that, you can see, if you look very closely, there are these passage doors. See this door here? This door, move this a little bit. This door here will allow oil in, but when you move it, the door shuts and it holds the oil inside. So oil can get in, and the door shuts to keep the oil inside. That's what that's there for. And there are 4 doors. I'll back up here so you can see. There are 4 doors. So there's a door on this side, there's a door here, and there's a door on this side. So 4 doors around here letting oil into the center where the pickup tube for the oil pump sits, to make sure that there's always oil at the pickup tube, okay? So that's what this oil pan is designed for. Let me back up to show you the pan again. That's what this one is designed for. And that's the basic design of this pan. Again, if you look at the side of this pan, and the design of this pan is to have this big sort of box here so that airflow can come across here and keep the oil cool before it goes and gets picked up. That's the way it's shaped on the bottom. And you can see how nice that the paint works. I love the Eastwood engine paints. So now what I'm going to do is, let me back up. The first thing we need to do is, I'm going to come over here by the engine, and one of the first things you really need to check is that you need to check the clearance between the bottom of the pickup tube and the bottom of the oil pan. And the clearance there should be between 3/8 of an inch and 1/2 an inch. So let me get this set up and we'll check our clearance to make sure I have the right clearance for my oil pickup tube. So, in order to check my clearance between the bottom of my pickup tube and the bottom of the oil pan, I need to have at least 3/8 to a 1/2 inch of clearance. So what I'm going to do is very simple. I have this, just a piece of 1/4 inch piece of aluminum that I'm going to sit on the bottom of my tube, bottom of my pickup, and I'm just going to take a piece of masking tape. I'm just going to tape it in place here, just to sit it there just like that. And I still have my oil pan, and I still have my oil pan with that plate taken out. Now, I'm going to sit the oil pan in place over that piece of aluminum, and as I sit it here, it bottoms out. So right now I have it's rocking now. So if I level that out, I've got that 1/4 inch plus the 1/8 of an inch, which will be about the thickness of the gasket. So I'm right at 3/8 of an inch. So right now I'm sure that I have the proper clearance between the bottom of my pickup tube and the bottom of the oil pan. So now I can put my cover back on, and I can start to put my oil pump back in place, or my oil pan back in place. I'll start to install that, but first I got to take off my little thing here, so I can't leave that on there. Okay. Now there are two parts to this gasket, this oil pan gasket. There's this rubber gasket, which fits in the groove of the timing chain cover, and that gets kind of inserted. There's a little tab. You see this little tab there? That little tab has got to go in that corner, so it's got to be forced in that corner, and then the rest of it, once you get it forced in there, will start to lay in the groove. That's the first part of the gasket. The second part of the gasket is this tab, the paper gasket that goes around the block, and this tab has got to go underneath. Let's see if I can get in here close so you can see. That tab has got to go between the rubber part and the bottom of the timing chain cover. So you see how that tab kind of slides in there? And that is what seals between the bottom of the rubber gasket and the top of the paper gasket. So before I do that, I'm going to take this out of here, and I'm going to take off my paper gasket, and of course, as you've heard me say a million times in all of my other videos, the key to a solid seal, or a good seal, is cleanliness. So I'm going to go around very carefully, including in this groove, and I'm going to clean. I'm going to use some lacquer thinner, and I'm going to clean, make sure this entire surface around the whole block and around each groove in the front and rear main seal and the rear cap is completely clean. So I'm going to do that. Let me take a few minutes and do that. Now I have my rubber seal. I'm going to put around the front and rear main. The front goes on the timing chain cover. The rear one goes on the rear main cap. And I have my Permatech high tack here. And I'm using a paintbrush because it makes it a little neater and it's easier to apply. And I'm just going to put a coat in the groove here to make sure I have a good seal between the rubber and the aluminum timing chain cover. I'm also going to get down in the corner there where that tab sits, because I want to make sure I have a good seal at the bottom. And this stuff can be a bit stringy, so you just got to be a little careful and take your time. So I got plenty of it down in the bottom. I got plenty of it over at the top, and I have it done like that. So now I have my seal, which I'm going to wipe off to make sure it's oil free and clean. And when you install this seal, in this particular seal there's not a front or back, so it can go in either way. But I'm going to start by inserting it into the tab and getting that tab down into the part of the timing chain cover where it meets the bottom of that. So, and I'm just going to work it around, and then on the other side I'm going to put the tab in on that side, push that in, and then I'm just going to take this seal and I'm just going to make sure that it's pushed in to the groove. And I'm doing that while the high tack is still a little sticky. And then I'm going to check on both sides to make sure that my gasket, when I put the gasket in there, that the tab fits just underneath and it's nice and snug. Okay, so I'm sure that's going to fit nice and snug. So now I'll do the back one, and then we will put on the side gaskets. Now with my rubber gasket in place around the timing chain cover and my paper gasket, you can see I did trim this so I didn't have the big square sitting on here, so I trimmed the gasket because I like it nice and neat. I'm going to pull my gasket back, and I'm going to put high tack all the way around the perimeter. I'm going to put both my side gaskets on. Now, a word about gaskets before I do that. This is a paper gasket. I'm pretty sure, actually I'm very sure, that the deck surface of the oil pan from the block to the timing chain cover is very flat. So I'm using a paper gasket. If you're going to use a cork gasket, the cork gasket is going to be thicker, number one. Number two, when you torque it down, the cork gasket is going to have a tendency to want to push out like this. So when you torque it down, it's going to squeeze out, which is why I don't use cork gaskets. You could, if you want, you really don't need a gasket. There are builders who will simply take and put a bead of great stuff, the right stuff. They'll take a bead of right stuff and put it all the way around here and just put the oil pan on with the right stuff. But I like the paper gaskets and I use those. I haven't had any problems with them and I like the way they work. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to put a coat of high tack all the way around the perimeter, and I'll put my two paper gaskets in place. Okay, now my paper gasket is in place with the high tack all the way around. My rubber gasket is in place all the way around. I'm positive that I have a good connection between the tab and the paper here. But before I'm going to put a coating of high tack all the way around the top of this paper gasket to seal that between that and the oil pan, and I'll put it up on top of this rubber gasket just to make sure I have a seal there. Before I do that, on all four corners where the paper gasket meets the rubber gasket, I'm going to take some Ultra Black, the Permatex Ultra Black, and I'm going to put a bead in this corner here, like this. And I'll zoom in so you can see just exactly what I'm doing here, because this is the most common spot where it will leak. So I'm going to put just some Ultra Black in this corner, right where these two meet, just like that. And I'm going to do that on all four corners. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it inside the timing chain cover so that it forms a seal on the inside. That way the oil will not have a chance to even start to leak out. It'll be stopped inside. I'm trying to form a seal inside the timing chain cover, and equally the same way on the back on the rear main where this meets there. So I'm going to do all four corners just like that before I put the oil pan on. Okay, high tack all the way around. Everything's nice and clean. The oil pan is clean. There's 22 bolts that go around here, and I'm not going to bore you watching that. But I'm going to take my oil pan. I did put my metal back in the bottom there, so I have my plate back in place. I'm going to gently set my oil pan in place. Line it up with the front and rear holes, and gently push it down into place, making sure that I don't push any of the gaskets out of position. So I'm going to start with if you know Fords, you know that there are two different size bolts for the oil pan. The bigger ones go close in, so I'm going to start with these. I'll just put these in. to secure it. And just like any other part that you tighten down that has many bolts in a circular pattern, you go in sequence around to make sure you have equal torque on everything. So I'm just going to put the front two in just to get them started. And then I'll put the back two in to make sure I have a good seal. Now I'll go around with the rest of the bolts and we'll go through a torquing sequence. So there you have it. I went around the perimeter of all my bolts 5 times, going a little bit at a time to make sure they all had the same torque on them. And as you can see, there's no big gobs of any sealant coming out of the side of the oil pan. It's a very clean installation. I used all 12-point ARP chrome bolts because they look really, really nice. Even though it's under the engine, you won't see it. I still like it to look nice. The front is nice and clean. The rear is nice and clean. And it's all the way around. It's a very neat installation. So if you take your time, put your sealants on very carefully with a brush, and put your gaskets down and torque down evenly, making sure that you go all the way around in a pattern to make sure you're torquing evenly, you'll have a very successful installation. This oil pan came out great. You can see the blue. I love the Eastwood paints. They are awesome. That's about it for oil pans. I know it's not a ton of information, but it should be enough to help you out get started when you're choosing an oil pan and how to successfully install one to make sure it's not going to leak. I'd like to take a second to say thank you to everybody for all your text messages. I've loved some of the conversations we've had about the engines you're building. Thank you very much. Keep them coming. I love talking to you guys. All your emails. Again, it takes me a little while to get to email because, you know, it's going to be 2016 and email is a little slow. I don't use email as much as texting. It's a lot faster. And I love all the comments you guys leave. If you do this, if you build engines, if there's something you do that's different or you don't like what I did, you know, just share it with us. I'm not saying I'm the best in the world, but I do have some great success with what I do, so I'm sharing it with everybody. So if you do something different, or if you like to use a different material or different sealant, whatever it is, share it with us. There's a million ways to do this kind of work. That by far, I'm not by far the only way to have this done. So I appreciate all the information. I appreciate the conversations we get to have. And thanks to all you guys from around the world who send me messages and leave comments. I really, really like it. I'm posting this video close to Christmas. So I would like to say Merry Christmas to all my friends and everybody who leaves comments and everybody who subscribes to my channel. And I've really enjoyed doing this with all you guys. It's been a lot of fun, and I can plan on continuing doing a lot of it. I'm almost done with this engine. All I have left to do for videos, I got to flip it over. I'll talk about fuel injection, fuel systems, and then we'll talk about prepping your engine before you take it to a dyno. Then we'll take this engine to the dyno. We'll put it on the dyno. We'll set up the computer. We'll get some programming done. And we'll do a few pulls. We'll see how it really performs. Everybody's been asking how is this engine going to perform. They're dying to see it run. So am I. We're getting there. I got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of projects, and a lot of other work for a lot of other people. So I am getting to this, and I'm committed to having this done very, very soon. So stick around, and we'll see this baby fire up. Thanks a lot again for all your comments. Everybody have a very Merry Christmas, a very healthy New Year, and I hope to see you all very soon. Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage.